Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to be working with the text input. So we need to create an input that we can use across our app. So an input that can allow us to specify, let's say, the right icon or the left icon, that we can specify maybe an error. And when we say maybe component has error, then it can show like in red and make it really good. Maybe we want to define how it should look when it's focused. So what you get out of the box when you have, let's say, a text input from React Native is basically something really simple that doesn't really do a lot. But if we wanted to add things like the icons and that kind of thing, we need to really write a custom one. So I'm gonna be working in the login side. So since login and register are going to not have like headers, of course, just a minute, let me change the auth state to be false by default, so that we can be looking at the screens for the auths from the auth stack. Okay, so when it's false, you notice that these screens have headers here, these toolbars on Android, but we don't want the toolbars on the screen that where a user is not authenticated. So we're going to go to the navigator. So if we go to the auth navigator, so here we can specify more props here. So we can specify one called screen options. So this is screen option, it's going to be an object, and then we can say we don't want the header. So when we come here, you'll notice that there are very many props you can pass, but what we want is to say we don't want a header. So header shown, we need to turn that to false. Okay, so when you save that, you'll see that the header goes away, and now we can now start to work within these auth screens. So if we go to the login screen here, first off, we need to use the container component, the one we just created. That's because it's going to give us the scroll behavior and also the paddings. So when you save, you notice that is there. But now, if we bring our text input, this is the one that we have by default. So I'm going to copy paste it here, bring it down here. Then we need to import it. Make sure you're importing it from React Native for now. Then save. We also need some state. So I'm going to copy this one out and bring it to the component here. So if we save, you notice that we have this. Now this is what we're going to be starting on. So I'm going to copy this and create a component called input. So in the components, then common, I'm going to create a folder called input. So this should be in common. So I'm going to move it here. So input, we can have the JavaScript file and also the style file. So style.js. Okay, so for the input, so we saw we're using this, we can rnfe, then we can call it maybe input. Then let's return the input like this. Make sure we are importing the text properly. So all this stuff are going to be passed from the components that are going to be using this. So since these props are going to be passed from the parent component or the component that's going to be using this input, we can get them in as props. So we're going to get on text change. So let's get on text change. Then for the style, we can also get it. And for the value, let's also get it. If it's passed, then let's of course change this to be the one that the user passes or the one we pass in the component. So here we are going to have some initial styles. So here I'm going to use this syntax and have some multiple styles here. So I'm going to create my style called style.textInput. So this should be fast, so that when a user passes their own, when a user passes their own, then we can override what we have defined. So I'm going to import styles from styles. So that should be not container, but .styles. So let's create, so in here, now we can export our style sheet. So export default stylesheet.create. Then of course it's going to return some object. Okay, so once we have this, and let's go back to our parent component. Let's remove this text, actually, we don't need it here. So we are going to be importing our normal input. So import input from the one we created. So when we save it, you see it's still working as we want it to. Now here, for the style, let's hold on to pass it. So for the style, we will be implementing our custom one. Now we also want the user to be able to pass a label, which they can't pass by default. So let's say label equals, let's say something like username. Okay, so you notice that this component doesn't really accept the label yet. So inside the parent component, we are going to check if a user has passed the label. So if a user has passed the label, then we can return a text with that label. So we can say text, then we show that label. Okay, like that. So let's also get the label here. Label. So we say if you have a label, then show it. Okay, so now you see we have the label being shown on top of the input. So about the input, we need to give it some other styles. And also, a user can be able to pass, let's say, an icon. Let's say we have an input that takes in a password, and we want the user to be able to toggle between, let's say, a password being shown and a password being hidden icon. So what you can do, since the icon is going to be on the same line as the text input, we're going to put them in the same view so that we can put them left to right or right to left, depending on what we want to do. So let's have a view in there. So for the view, we said if a user passes an icon, so let's pick icon here, icon. So if a user passes an icon, then we want to show it. If icon, then show it. Then we need to have the text input in there too. And I'm going to have this in a view so that we can style it better. Yeah, so the input is going to be here, and then the icon can be here, inside here. So this means these are all inside this one. So now let's first style the input. So at this point, this is our input now here, because it has the icon, it has the text input. So here, let's first put our styles. So style equals styles. I'm going to be calling it wrapper. So let's go and create the wrapper inside styles. So wrapper is going to be an object. So let's have a height. So the height is going to be 42. Let's also have some border. It's a border color. So about the colors, I'm going to go in assets, in themes. Then I'm going to set up a new file called colors.js. So in here, I'm going to just export an object. So export default object. And then in here, I'm going to have some color values here. So I have a primary one, a secondary one, an accent one, a danger one, a success one, a gray one, and a white one. But you can have different ones in here if you want a different theme. So feel free to tamper with these. But for now, I'm going to be using these. So about the color, so border color, we can now use our colors, the one we just created. So colors, let's import it. Then we want to use a gray one for the inputs. Okay, so when we save it, you'll notice that it's not showing. That's because we need width for the border. So let's do border width 1. So border width, let's do 1 and save. And notice that now it has a border. So I'm also going to give it some border radius so we can get some rounded corners. So let me give it a 4 one. You see that now it's kind of rounded. So now that we have this, I'm going to go to where we are using it. So I'm going to go here and also specify an icon. So we can do icon. Let's say an icon is going to be a JSX. So right now we can use text, but it can be anything. So let's have something like hide here. Okay, so when we save it, look where it goes. You see it goes here, but we also want to be able to say, okay, show it on the right or on the left. So meaning we are going to also need to create a prop called icon position. So let's have icon position. Now, if we go to the input, just come over here. Let's expect icon position. Now, we need to keep styling this better. So over here, let's also have the style for the text input. At this point, if we say something like background, then let's have a red in there to see what exactly is happening. You notice that it's down here, but what we want is it to be left to right with the icon. So we can come over here in wrapper and then say flex direction, and then for the flex direction, it's going to be raw. So when we save it, you see it goes here. Now, when it goes here, we really want it to spread over because when a user clicks here, we want it to focus. So at this point, it can only focus when a user clicks here. Okay. So what we want is come to give it a flex one. So flex 1 and save, and that makes it spread over. Okay, so that looks good. So once we have this, now This will only happen when we have the icon, but sometimes the user may not pass the icon. For example, if we come over here and disable this, so let's say in the login the user didn't pass the icon, you see it's gonna be taking off the whole screen. Okay, so let's save. Okay, so here let's give it some padding in here. So some padding on the left and on the right. So I'm gonna go back to the style, then where we have the wrapper, then let's give it some padding. Let's say padding horizontal. So the horizontal will be affecting here and here. Okay, so right here you notice that we have this one here. So if I had, let's say, another input, let's say in the usage, if we created another one like this, let's duplicate it, you notice that it's going to be getting stuck on top. So what you can do, so where you have the label and these inputs, what you can do is come over here and have, let's say, another class, another style here. So style, so I'm gonna call this one input container. So class styles, it's gonna be called input container. Okay, so let's have this in the styles. So we can have this, make sure there's a comma, then let's have a padding vertical. So for the padding vertical, now we can say something like 12 here. And when we save, you see that there is a space when we add more inputs. Okay, so looking good. Now let me remove this color here. I don't like the look of this red here. So let's remove it. Okay, so now you notice that the height is not really centered. So what we want is we want to go to the component. So here, so on this one, we want to align these items, the icon and then the input. So I'm going to use this syntax here and also add another style. So here we can do align items. Now here we can do center. So when we say center, you see it goes in the center. But once we don't have the icon, let's say we don't have the icon and come over here and click, you see that it's looking good the way it should. Okay, so that means we can really move this style away. So I'm gonna bring it to the wrapper too. So cut it out, then to the wrapper, make sure we are aligning center. Okay, all right, so now that we have that, the component is starting to take shape. So let me come here in the usage so it makes sense. Let me change this one to password and only have this icon where we need the password. Okay, so this, you notice that we are saying icon position equals right, but it's on the left. So we need to actually be able to change where this one is. So with Flexbox, instead of us saying it should display row, we can do something like display row reverse, and it's going to change this. So here you notice that in the input, so in the wrapper, we have display row here, flex direction row here. So I'm going to cut it and move it away. So in the input, I'm going to have another style. Then this is going to be flex direction. So for the flex direction, I'm going to have a function to do this. I'm going to call it get flex direction. So for the get flex direction, it's not flexed, but flex. Let's call it. So let's create it in here. So I'm going to come here. So const get flex direction. It's going to be a function. So here we're going to be checking the icon position. So if we need first check if you have the icon, and we have the icon position. So if you have the icon position, so here we can check if the icon position is left. So if icon position is left, then we can return row. Like this. So if it's right, so we can say else, then we can return row reverse. So return row reverse. So that means that we are going to need to swap them. Okay, so this is not left, so you see it goes to the right. So here you notice that I can click, it's on the right. Now if we came and change it to, let's say here we say it should go to the left, and save. You see that now it goes to the left. Okay, so that's well and good. Things are looking good. So now we want, if we passed, let's say, an error prop, if we said error, so let's say we passed error equals, let's say something like this field is required. We would want to show a red indicator as the border and also show this error. So I'm going to go to the text component and also pick the error as prop. So let's say a user passed an error, or we passed an error. And when I say user, it's someone who is reusing this component, by the way. So here we want to check if we have the error. Instead of us having to declare border color like this, I'm gonna remove it from here. So on the input, we can have border color, and then we can have something like get border color. Let's call it, put a comma there, then let's create it. It's gonna crash, but don't worry, we're fixing that. So const get border color, it's gonna be a function. So if we say, if we don't have an error, so basically if we have an error, so if error, we want to be returning colors dot danger. Let's make sure we're importing colors. Okay, now if we don't, then we need to return our gray. So return colors dot gray, gray like this. So when you save, you notice that it goes there. Now down here in the input, we need to save. Make sure you don't have this here, and save. Also, you notice that our component is pretty much stuck to the label, meaning we need to add at least some style there to make it look a bit better. So we can come up here, and then it is the wrapper. So we can give it like a margin top. So margin top, let's give it like a 5 and see how it looks. Okay, looks better, looks good for me. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to show the error when it is there. So outside the wrapper, meaning here, we can say if we have an error, then we want to show a text. So we can say show a text. So this text, we can show the error itself. So let's put it there and save, and you notice that the error shows. Now let's tidy it a bit. Equals styles.error. So let's create this style. So in here, let's come and add error like here. So for the error, of course, we want the text to be red. So color, we are going to use our colors. So colors.danger, and save, and you see it looks like that. Also, at this we need to add some padding, a small padding on the top. So we can have padding top, not padding, so padding top. Let's give it like 4. Okay, looking good. Let's also make the font a bit smaller. So font size, let's make it like 12. Save it, and yeah. So this looks good to me. If we came here and didn't pass it and didn't pass the error, let's say we didn't pass this error, you see it's okay. There's an error, it shows. Now one thing I want to do is when a user focuses in, I want to change the color of the border so that it shows that the user is really active doing something in there. So for us to be able to change the border or focus it, we need to detect if a user is actually focusing on it. So we do this by using 2 methods. So one is going to be on bra, another one is going to be the on focus. So I'm going to have an inner state here that's going to keep track if the input is being focused or not. So it's going to be focused, set focused. So by default it's going to be false, of course, because that's how it should be. That's how the input is going to be. The user wants to be focusing it by default. So let's make sure we're importing it from React. It's not React dot that. Okay, so want to check if it's focused. So we can say instead of this border, we can say if it's focused. So if focused, then return colors dot primary. Okay, so how do we focus it? So we're gonna go here and add an event handler. So we're gonna say on focus, it's gonna be a function. So this function is gonna be setting focused to true. Okay, so now when I come here and really focus in here, you see it gets focused, and look, now it has changed the color and it is blue. Okay, so now when we go away, let's say we go to the next one, you notice that this is still blue, but we want to reset it. So meaning we want to have an on blur. So on blur is gets called when a user leaves the input or when it loses focus. So it's basically the opposite of on focus. So now we can say set focused to false. Okay, this means that when a user comes, let's say they come over here and they click somewhere and then they leave and then they come to the next one, this one is reset. So let's remove our error from here, from the usage. So let's remove the error here, and now you can see you can come to this input and also this input and things will be good. If you notice that our first input is actually starting in the middle, so if I come here and focus on this one, you will see that it's starting in the middle, and that's because we said align items to the center, but we don't have an icon there. So instead of us having to put the align items in the style, I'm gonna come here, where is it, styles, align item center. So I'm going to remove it here. So when I remove it, you see it goes to the left, but this is not really aligned properly. So now we can go in our JavaScript file, and here we can also have align items. So it won't be center by default. So we can say if we have an icon, so let's say we have an icon. So if you have an icon, we want it to be center. Okay, but if we don't have it, keep it to the baseline, to the default one, and then let's make sure, and then let's save it. So we are saying if icon, then this should be a ternary. So we're saying if icon, put it to the center, else don't. So if we have an icon, put it to the center, else return the default one. So now we can see that our input is looking good. It's good. We focus it. It's working fine. And yeah. So another thing we shouldn't forget is that since the text input has like very many props, in fact, when I come here to the documentation, you see that there are very many things that the user can pass. So we still want to have a way to pass them. So in our input, we are gonna go here and also spread over other inputs that the user might pass. And also once we get this, then it should not be like this. So we can go ahead and get all the other inputs that the user can pass, and also we pass those ones to the input. So over here now we can spread them to the input, because there is literally no way we are going to be typing all this stuff. We can just inherit them and pass them to the component or at last. Make sure you're setting it as the last prop here, otherwise it will not work. Okay, so that looks good to me. I hope this video was helpful. In the next video, we're going to be creating some other components. I will talk to you soon.